Congratulations, you've arrived at the most awaited portal of the year. The 8-8 Lions Gate portal is now open as we speak. This is the point people have been building toward for weeks, because 8-8 has long been treated as a crucial spiritual window. And that is why it is crucial that you understand what is being activated today if you want to stay aligned with it. Every Lion's Gate is usually connected to 3 spiritual centers more than the others: the heart, the third eye, and the crown. The heart comes first because this period is often associated with stronger compassion, forgiveness, and emotional healing. You may notice that certain things feel easier to understand from a calmer place, or that you are less interested in carrying emotional weight that once felt important. The point is not to become overly emotional, but to become clearer about what deserves space in your heart and what does not. Then there is the third eye, which is linked to intuition and inner vision. During Lion's Gate, people often describe feeling sharper about what they sense, what they notice, and what feels right or wrong before they can fully explain why. It can feel like your inner judgment becomes harder to ignore. And finally, the crown chakra is connected to spiritual connection itself. This is where people may feel more reflective, more aware of meaning, and more interested in questions that normally get buried under everyday life. The important thing is that these 3 centers do not work separately. When the heart becomes clearer, intuition becomes easier to trust. And when intuition becomes clearer, your sense of spiritual direction can become much stronger. One of the biggest misconceptions around Lion's Gate is that everybody is supposed to use it in exactly the same way. You hear that 8-8 is a manifestation portal, so naturally, the advice becomes: decide what you want, write it down, visualize it, and ask for it. But there is a problem with that. What if you genuinely have no idea what you want next? This is where Lion's Gate can split into 2 completely different paths. The first is the attraction path, and this is for the person who already has something clear in their mind. Maybe there is a goal you have been thinking about for months, a direction you are already committed to, or something you know you want to experience. If that is you, today is about removing the noise around that desire and placing your attention behind one clear intention. You don't need 20 wishes just because it is 8-8. One that actually matters to you is enough. But the second path is almost the opposite. This is the discovery path. And strangely, this may be the more important one for some people watching. If you don't know what comes next, don't manufacture an answer just because today feels important. Use the portal to ask better questions. What am I actually looking for? What am I no longer interested in chasing? What would I choose if nobody else could see the choice? Because sometimes uncertainty isn't something you need to escape immediately. It can be the exact position from which something new becomes visible. You don't need to know what to manifest when what you truly need is something you haven't discovered yet. And this leads into something people rarely say about Lion's Gate. Getting ritual ideas from someone else is completely fine, but copying a ritual that was designed around their specific intentions may not carry the same meaning for you. If someone shares a ritual that resonates with you, use it, but adapt it to what you are actually going through, what you want, and what this day represents for you. The purpose of a ritual is not complexity. The purpose is meaning. A ritual becomes powerful when the action means something to the person doing it. That means your 8-8 ritual could be ridiculously simple. You could drink a glass of water slowly while deciding exactly what you want to carry into the months ahead. You could write one sentence that you genuinely intend to live by. You could step outside at sunrise and spend a few minutes deciding what deserves your attention now. You could clean one small part of your room because to you, that physical action represents making space. You could even make one concrete decision that you have been avoiding and let that decision become the ritual itself. So, if you find a ritual online that you like, there is nothing wrong with using it. Just make it yours. Change the intention, the words, or even the action slightly so it actually reflects where you are right now. There is one very easy way to spend the entire Lionsgate doing absolutely nothing with it. And strangely, it can look spiritual from the outside. It is constantly checking whether something is happening. You keep looking for a sign, checking whether your manifestation is moving, wondering if that random number meant something, asking yourself whether you can feel the portal yet. And before you realize it, the whole day has turned into one long attempt to prove that the day is special. The problem is that this pulls you out of the actual experience. You stop making choices and start monitoring yourself. You stop paying attention to what you genuinely want and start paying attention to whether the universe has responded yet. That is where the irony of 8-8 gets interesting, because someone can spend the entire day searching for evidence that Lionsgate is powerful and completely miss what is actually happening in their own life. Not every meaningful moment arrives with proof attached to it. If you set an intention today, you do not need to dig it back up every hour to check whether it worked. If you make a decision, let yourself actually live inside that decision for a while. And this is where Lionsgate becomes much more interesting, because August 8th may not be the climax at all. The traditional Lionsgate window is often said to remain active until around August 12th. And this year, that date carries an entirely different kind of weight, because August 12th also brings a new moon alongside a total solar eclipse. That changes the way you can look at the entire 5-day period. Lionsgate is usually associated with intention, direction, and opening yourself to possibility, while eclipses have traditionally been viewed as much less gentle. They are associated with acceleration, interruption, sudden shifts, and moments that force something into the open much faster than expected. So rather than treating August 8th as one isolated spiritual event, think of it as the beginning of an arc. The 8th is where you choose what you are moving toward, and the 12th is where that choice meets pressure. Something you set in motion now may be strengthened, challenged, redirected, or revealed in a completely different way once the eclipse arrives. August 8th asks what you want. August 12th may ask whether you actually mean it. That is why these next few days matter just as much as today itself. Lionsgate may open the door, but the eclipse can show you what survives once everything around that intention starts moving. There is something strangely fitting about the number at the center of this entire day. Turn an 8 sideways and you immediately get the infinity symbol, which is why 8 is so often connected with endless cycles and possibility. But keep the number upright and something much more interesting appears. You have 2 large spaces, one above and one below, connected by an incredibly narrow point in the middle. That narrow point may actually be the most useful symbol for what 8-8 represents. You can have hundreds of possible futures in front of you, countless things you could pursue, and an enormous amount of potential, but eventually, all of those possibilities have to pass through something much smaller, a choice. And choices are rarely as impressive as the future they create. Sometimes it is sending one message, beginning something you have delayed, choosing one direction over another, or finally giving a clear answer where you have remained undecided. It can seem almost too small to matter, yet that tiny decision becomes the point through which everything afterward has to travel. We imagine destiny as something enormous, but sometimes it has to squeeze through a decision that takes 5 seconds to make. So if you want to use the symbolism of 8 today, don't only look at infinity and think about everything that could happen. Pay attention to the middle. Ask yourself what single choice currently sits between where you are and all those possibilities you keep imagining. Because the smallest part of the 8 may be hiding its biggest lesson. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. People can only love you to the capacity that they love themselves. Hold compassion and do not take it personally when they don't give what you expected. I think the last part of this comment is especially important. It's very easy to interpret what someone cannot give you as a reflection of your own worth. You wonder if you asked for too much, did something wrong, or simply weren't enough. But sometimes you're asking someone for something they haven't even learned how to give themselves. That doesn't mean you have to accept poor treatment or lower your standards. It just means you don't have to carry their limitations as evidence that something is wrong with you. You can understand someone, have compassion for them, and still recognize that you deserve more. And then there is the other half of the name that gets repeated every year without much thought. The lion. Usually the explanation stops at courage, confidence, leadership, or strength. But there is a much more interesting quality of a lion that fits this portal surprisingly well. A lion does not spend every second demonstrating that it is powerful. It can lie completely still without becoming less powerful. It doesn't need constant movement to prove that something is happening, and it doesn't need to perform its strength every moment for that strength to remain real. Most of its power exists before there is ever a reason to use it. That creates a very different spiritual message for 8-8, especially in a world where people constantly feel pressured to prove that they are progressing. You need another sign that you are awakening, another manifestation to prove that you are aligned, another breakthrough to show that you are moving forward. Eventually, spirituality itself can become a performance when nothing feels valuable unless there is visible evidence attached to it. But maybe the lion represents the exact opposite. Power does not disappear just because nobody is watching you use it. You can be moving in the right direction without having something impressive to show for it today. You can know what you want without announcing it. You can become clearer without experiencing some enormous spiritual moment. And perhaps one of the strangest lessons hidden inside Lion's Gate is that real power becomes much easier to recognize once you stop demanding that it constantly prove itself. There is something strange that tends to happen as a spiritual date like 8-8 gets closer to its final hours. People begin mentally reviewing the day and asking themselves whether anything actually happened. Maybe you expected some unmistakable sign, an incredible manifestation, a sudden opportunity, or at least one moment where you could confidently say, "That was the portal." And if none of that happened, it becomes very easy to reach the conclusion that you missed it, used it incorrectly, or simply felt nothing at all. But that may be the wrong way to measure a day like this, because we have a habit of looking for spiritual experiences in the form of events when sometimes the most important result is a decision that did not exist 12 hours earlier. Think about how much can quietly change in one day without your external circumstances changing at all. You can wake up uncertain about something and reach the evening knowing exactly where you stand. Something you desperately wanted in the morning can suddenly seem far less important by tonight. You might realize that a goal you kept postponing actually matters much more than you admitted, or finally recognize that something you have been pursuing was never really yours to begin with. None of those things necessarily give you a dramatic story to tell, but they can completely change what you do tomorrow. And that is why the final hours of 8/8 can actually be more revealing than the beginning. In the morning, you are looking forward. You are thinking about what might happen, what you want to attract, what the portal could bring, and how you are supposed to use it. By tonight, you have something the morning version of you did not have: the experience of actually moving through the day. So before you decide whether Lion's Gate worked for you, ask yourself one very specific question. What do I know tonight that I did not know this morning? Do not force some enormous spiritual answer. It could be surprisingly practical. Maybe you now know which opportunity you actually want. Maybe you realized you have been trying to convince yourself to want something that no longer excites you. Perhaps a random idea stayed in your mind for the entire day, when normally you would have forgotten about it within minutes. Maybe you finally admitted that there is something you want badly enough to take seriously. Or perhaps the answer is simply that you expected today to give you direction, but discovered that you already knew the direction and were waiting for something outside of yourself to approve it. That last possibility is especially interesting, because spiritual dates can sometimes become permission slips. We wait for the right moon, the right portal, the right sign, or the right feeling before allowing ourselves to make a choice that has been sitting in front of us the entire time. Then the date arrives, and the most valuable thing it does is make our own hesitation impossible to ignore. A powerful day does not always change your life before midnight. Sometimes it changes what you are willing to do tomorrow. And there is no need to turn midnight into some imaginary spiritual deadline either. Nothing needs to magically disappear when August 8th becomes August 9th. The point is simply that the ending of the date gives you a useful moment to compare yourself with the person who woke up this morning. If one thing became clearer, one desire became stronger, one question became impossible to ignore, or one decision finally became obvious, then something meaningful happened even if nobody else could see it. In fact, that may be a much better way to judge Lion's Gate than counting signs or waiting for some spectacular event. Ask what became obvious. Ask what survived your doubts throughout the day. Ask what you kept returning to without forcing yourself to return to it. Those are the things worth carrying forward, because once the excitement of 8/8 disappears, they are about to face a much more interesting test. And this is where the entire idea of Lion's Gate gets turned around, because August 8th may receive all of the attention, but August 9th could tell you far more about what today actually meant to you. Think about it. Today has a name attached to it. There are videos about it, rituals surrounding it, expectations attached to it, and this enormous sense that you are supposed to pay attention because 8/8 only happens once a year. That naturally makes certain thoughts feel more important. You may feel extremely motivated about a goal today, completely certain about an intention, fascinated by a new possibility, or convinced that you have finally understood something about yourself. But then, you wake up tomorrow. The date on the calendar has changed. The anticipation is gone. Nobody is telling you that this is the biggest portal of the year anymore. You are simply back inside an ordinary day. And strangely, that is when the real test begins, because now you get to find out which parts of your 8/8 experience belong to the excitement of the moment, and which parts genuinely belong to you. Maybe you wrote down 8 intentions today, and tomorrow 7 of them already feel forgettable. But there is one you cannot stop thinking about. Pay attention to that one. Maybe you made a decision today that felt incredibly exciting, and tomorrow it still feels right, even without the spiritual atmosphere surrounding it. That deserves attention too. Perhaps you discovered a question rather than an answer, and instead of disappearing overnight, that question becomes even more interesting once everything becomes quiet again. This is why the aftermath can be more revealing than the portal itself, Excitement can make almost anything feel significant for a few hours. Time is what separates temporary fascination from something that actually has roots. What survives the special day may matter more than what appeared during it. And this connects directly back to the two paths we talked about earlier. If you chose the attraction path because you already knew what you wanted, watch what happens to that desire once 8-8 is over. Does it still feel important when there is no portal encouraging you to focus on it? Are you still willing to take a real step toward it when the date is ordinary again? If the answer is yes, then perhaps today did not create the desire at all. It simply helped you recognize how serious you already were about it. And if you chose the discovery path because you genuinely did not know what came next, tomorrow becomes even more interesting. You do not need to wake up with your entire future figured out. Just notice what follows you out of today. Which thought returns naturally? Which possibility still makes you curious? Which question suddenly feels worth answering? Sometimes the first clue does not appear as certainty. It appears as something your attention keeps returning to even after you stop trying to make it important. This is also why you should be careful about declaring your 8-8 experience finished tonight. We naturally want immediate conclusions. We want to say the ritual worked, the manifestation worked, the portal was powerful, or nothing happened. But those conclusions are being made before you have even seen what remains afterward. Imagine planting an intention today and judging it entirely by how strongly you feel about it for the next 6 hours. If you've stayed with me until this point, I truly appreciate you being here. As you move through the rest of this 8/8 Lions Gate, remember that you don't need to force anything extraordinary to happen today. Take what genuinely stood out to you. Trust what feels worth carrying forward, and remember that this is only the beginning of what the next few days may bring. Keep moving toward what matters to you, and trust that good things can still be ahead. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.